Black janitor unveils secret invention, multimillionaire CEO backs his genius. Strategized script creation for compelling storytelling about invention. The polished tile floors reflected the fluorescent lights as William Jenkins pushed his mop slowly down the empty corridor of Westmont Technologies. It was nearly midnight. The executives had long since departed in their luxury cars, leaving William alone with his thoughts and the gentle sloshing of soapy water. He paused, looking around to ensure he was truly alone, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device no bigger than a matchbox. Its metallic surface gleamed under the harsh lighting as William turned it over in his weathered hands. "Come on, old friend, show me what you can do," he whispered. William placed the device on the floor and pressed a barely visible button on its side. The object hummed softly, then rose an inch off the ground, hovering perfectly still. A smile spread across William's face, a rare expression for a man who had spent decades being invisible to those who worked in this building during daylight hours. The device suddenly shot upward, spinning wildly before crashing into a ceiling panel. The commotion echoed through the empty hallway as William scrambled to retrieve his creation, heart pounding. As he reached for a stepladder, the door to the executive suite swung open. "Who's there?" demanded a commanding voice. William froze, his secret invention still lodged in the ceiling, his dreams of changing his life seemingly shattered in an instant. 6 months earlier, William Jenkins arrived at Westmont Technologies for his first night shift. At 62, he should have been contemplating retirement, not starting a new job. But life had other plans. After the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 30 years shut down and moved operations overseas, William found himself joining the invisible army that kept America's offices clean while their occupants slept. "You'll be responsible for the executive floor," explained Marjorie, the night shift supervisor, a kind woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen it all. "Those types don't like to see the cleaning happening, but they sure notice if it doesn't get done right." William nodded. He understood invisibility all too well. "Yes, ma'am, I'll make sure it's spotless." "And William," Marjorie added, lowering her voice, "the research labs on the lower level are strictly off-limits to cleaning staff, security protocols. The day crew handles those with special clearance." That first night, William moved methodically through the executive floor, dusting the awards and accolades that lined the walls, celebrations of innovation and technological breakthroughs he would never be a part of. In the corner office belonging to CEO Richard Whitman, William carefully vacuumed around an elaborate model of what appeared to be some kind of propulsion system. "Beautiful, isn't it?" William startled, nearly knocking over the model. He hadn't heard anyone enter. Standing in the doorway was a man in his early 60s, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt with rolled-up sleeves, looking more like a professor than the billionaire tech mogul whose face graced the business magazines in the lobby. "Mr. Whitman, I'm sorry, I was just no need to apologize," Richard said, waving away William's concern as he approached the model. "You know what this is?" William hesitated, then nodded. "Magnetic propulsion system, but this design has fundamental flaws in the electromagnetic field containment." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Richard's eyebrows shot up. "You know something about electromagnetic propulsion?" William lowered his eyes, focusing on the vacuum cleaner in his hands. "Just a hobby, sir. I read a lot." Richard studied William with newfound interest. "A hobby, right." He extended his hand. "Richard Whitman." "William Jenkins," he replied, reluctantly shaking the CEO's hand. "Well, Mr. Jenkins, I'd be interested to hear more about these fundamental flaws sometime." With that, Richard turned and left, leaving William wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. Over the following weeks, William found himself drawn to the forbidden research labs. Each night, he would finish his assigned areas early, then stand by the keypad-protected doors, imagining the innovations taking place beyond them. Occasionally, he'd spot abandoned notes or discarded prototype parts in the executive floor trash cans, carelessly tossed away ideas that most would see as garbage. William saw them differently. In his small apartment in a neighborhood that had seen better days, William had converted his living room into a workshop. What began as a childhood fascination with taking apart radios and rebuilding them had evolved into a lifelong passion for invention. Bookshelves lined with engineering textbooks and scientific journals, purchased second-hand or rescued from library discards, surrounded a workbench covered with tools and half-finished projects. His current obsession sat at the center, a device that, if he could perfect it, might change everything. Based on principles of magnetic levitation and miniaturized propulsion, William was attempting to create what the engineers at Westmont had failed to accomplish, a self-contained anti-gravity module that required minimal power. William's neighbor and only real friend, Eleanor Washington, a retired school teacher who had known him since they were children growing up in the same housing project, was the sole person aware of his work. "William Jenkins, when are you going to show those fancy engineers what you can do?" Eleanor asked one Sunday afternoon as they shared coffee in his cluttered apartment. "My Harold, God rest his soul, always said you were the smartest man he ever met." William smiled at the mention of Eleanor's late husband. "Those fancy engineers have PhDs and laboratories with equipment that costs more than I'll earn in my lifetime, Ellie. And you've got something they don't," she insisted, tapping her temple. "What's up here? What's always been up here?" William's smile faded as he looked down at his calloused hands. "What I've got is a 9th grade education and a mop, Ellie. That's not all you've got, and you know it." Eleanor reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "My mama used to say, God doesn't give you dreams without giving you what you need to make them real. You just need to figure out how to use what you've been given." Later that night, as William made his way through the executive floor at Westmont, Eleanor's words echoed in his mind. Near Richard Whitman's office, he noticed a light still on. Curious, he peered inside and saw the CEO hunched over his desk, surrounded by crumpled papers and looking utterly defeated. William was about to continue on his way when Richard looked up and noticed him. "Jenkins, come in for a moment, would you?" Hesitantly, William entered the office, mop in hand. "Everything all right, Mr. Whitman?" Richard ran a hand through his silver hair. "Not particularly. We're about to lose a major defense contract because our team can't solve a stabilization issue with the miniaturized propulsion system." He gestured to the schematics spread across his desk. 4 years of work and hundreds of millions in investment about to go down the drain." William's eyes were drawn to the diagrams. Without thinking, he leaned closer. "Your containment field is collapsing because you're using a standardized polarity configuration." "What?" Richard looked up sharply. William pointed to the schematic. "If you reverse the polarity on these 2 points and create an oscillating field instead of a static one, the system should stabilize." Richard stared at him, then back at the diagrams. That's actually brilliant. How did you—" He stopped himself, studying William with new eyes. "You're not just a janitor, are you, Jenkins?" William straightened, gripping his mop handle tighter. "That's exactly what I am, Mr. Whitman. If you'll excuse me, I have floors to finish." As weeks passed, William noticed Richard watching him more closely. Occasionally, the CEO would engage him in conversation about current technological developments or theoretical physics conversations that left William both exhilarated and wary. He began to sense that Richard was testing him, trying to gauge the depth of his knowledge. Meanwhile, William continued working on his device at home. Each night, he would collect discarded components from the executive floor trash cast-offs that most would consider worthless, but that William saw as precious resources. A rejected circuit board here, a damaged power cell there. Bit by bit, his invention took shape. One evening, as summer turned to fall, William arrived at work to find the executive floor in chaos. Men in expensive suits rushed between offices, tension thick in the air. "What's happening?" William asked Marjorie as they observed the commotion from the service corridor. "Rumor is they lost that big government contract," she whispered. "The prototype failed during the final demonstration. Mr. Whitman is furious." Later that night, after the executives had finally left, William found himself drawn to Richard's office. The model of the propulsion system was gone, replaced by a scaled-down prototype that had clearly been damaged during testing. Without thinking about the consequences, William set down his cleaning supplies and began examining the device. The problem was immediately apparent to him, exactly what he'd warned about months ago. The containment field had collapsed just as he'd predicted. William glanced at the door, then back at the prototype. He knew he should walk away, continue with his duties. Instead, he opened his tool pouch and got to work. For 2 hours, William disassembled and rebuilt key components of the prototype, implementing the oscillating field design he'd suggested to Richard. As he worked, his hands moved with the confidence and precision of someone who had spent a lifetime bringing mechanical dreams to life. Just as he finished reassembling the device, he heard footsteps approaching. William quickly gathered his cleaning supplies, but before he could exit, Richard appeared in the doorway. "Jenkins," Richard said, his voice betraying surprise and something else suspicion. "It's after midnight. What are you doing in my office?" William's heart pounded. "Just finishing up, sir. Good night." He attempted to brush past the CEO, but Richard blocked his path. "Wait." Richard's eyes moved from William to the prototype on his desk. "Did you touch that?" William swallowed hard. "I noticed it was damaged. I thought I might be able to help." Richard approached the desk and examined the prototype, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he turned back to William. "Do you have any idea what this is worth, what the contract behind it is worth?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitman, I shouldn't have—" "Test it," Richard interrupted. "Sir, turn it on, test what you did." With trembling hands, William approached the prototype and activated the power sequence. The device hummed to life, its components glowing as energy flowed through them. Unlike before, the system remained stable, the oscillating field containing the magnetic forces perfectly. Richard's eyes widened. "My God," he whispered, "you fixed it." He looked at William with newfound respect and confusion. "Who are you really?" The question hung in the air between them, challenging William to reveal the truth he'd kept hidden for so long. In the weeks that followed, an unusual relationship formed between the billionaire CEO and the janitor. Richard, impressed by William's natural genius, began leaving engineering problems on his desk for William to solve during his shift. Each morning, Richard would arrive to find elegant solutions sketched on notepads or minor adjustments made to prototypes that solved issues his highly paid engineering team had been struggling with for months. The defense contract was saved, and Richard found himself increasingly dependent on William's uncanny ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. Yet William remained hesitant, keeping his distance and refusing Richard's offers to meet with the engineering team or take on a more formal role. "I don't belong in that world," William explained one night when Richard pressed him. "I'm comfortable where I am." "That's nonsense," Richard countered. "You have a gift, Jenkins. You're wasting it pushing a mop around." William's expression hardened. "There's dignity in honest work, Mr. Whitman, something folks like you often forget." Richard was taken aback by the edge in William's voice. "What does that mean, folks like me?" "It means people born with every advantage who think they know what's best for everyone else." William turned away, focusing on wiping down a shelf. "I've spent my life watching men like you decide what opportunities I deserve." A tense silence filled the room before Richard spoke again, his voice quieter. "You're right, I apologize." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But I hope someday you'll trust me enough to tell me your story, William. I think there's a lot more to you than meets the eye." As autumn deepened, William continued refining his own invention at home. The small anti-gravity device was nearly complete, a marvel of engineering created from discarded parts and brilliant improvisation. If it worked as he hoped, it could revolutionize transportation, construction, even space travel. More importantly for William, it would be proof that the path not taken could have led somewhere extraordinary. One evening, Alina came by his apartment, bringing a homemade peach cobbler and decades of friendship. She found William hunched over his workbench, completely absorbed in fine-tuning his creation. "William Jenkins, when was the last time you ate something that didn't come out of a microwave?" she scolded gently, setting down the dessert. William looked up, blinking as if emerging from a trance. "Is it evening already?" Alina shook her head, examining the small metallic device on the workbench. "Is this it, the thing you've been talking about for years?" William nodded, a rare smile lighting his face. "It's almost ready, Ellie, just a few more adjustments." "And then what?" she asked, settling into the armchair beside his workbench, the only piece of living room furniture not repurposed for his workshop. "And then?" William's voice trailed off. He hadn't thought that far ahead. Creating the device had been his singular focus for so long. "You know what I think?" Alina didn't wait for him to answer. "I think you're afraid of success, William, always have been, ever since those teachers back in school told you to be realistic about your prospects." William winced at the memory. "It wasn't just teachers, Ellie, it was everyone. My whole life, people took one look at me and decided what I could and couldn't do. And somewhere along the way, you started believing them," she said softly. "But this," she gestured to the device, "this is your chance to prove them all wrong." Later that night at Westmont, William found Richard waiting for him in the executive suite, an intense expression on his face. "Jenkins, we need to talk," Richard said, motioning for William to join him in his office. "Something's come up." William followed cautiously, his mind racing through possibilities. Had Richard discovered his scavenging of discarded parts? Was he about to be fired? Inside the office, Richard closed the door and turned to face him. "The board is putting pressure on me to bring in new talent, specifically the person who's been helping solve our engineering challenges." William tensed. "I don't understand." "They know someone's been helping me. They don't know it's you," Richard explained. "But they want to meet this mysterious consultant who saved our biggest contract." He paused, studying William's reaction. I've respected your privacy until now, but I can't keep covering for you. Either you step into the light or I'll have to stop our arrangement. That's not fair, William protested. My solutions work. Why does it matter who I am? Because in business, perception matters, Richard replied, and because I think you deserve recognition for your contributions. He softened his tone. William, I've researched you. I know you never finished high school. I know you worked at Middleton Manufacturing for 30 years before they closed down. What I don't know is how someone with no formal education became one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever encountered. William stood silent, feeling cornered. Tomorrow night, Richard continued, there's a demonstration for potential investors. I want you there not as a janitor, but as the consultant who's been integral to our recent breakthroughs. And if I refuse? William asked quietly. Richard sighed. Then I'll respect your decision, but I think you'd be making a mistake when you've perhaps been making your entire life. That night, William completed his shift in a daze, Richard's words echoing in his mind. As he walked home in the pre-dawn hours, the weight of a lifetime of choices and non-choices pressed down on him. In his apartment, he stared at his invention, so close to completion, yet still hidden from the world just like his talent. With sudden determination, William worked through the day, making final adjustments to his device. By evening, exhausted but resolute, he activated it. The small metallic box hummed softly, then rose steadily off the workbench, hovering with perfect stability. It works, he whispered, watching as his creation defied gravity. It actually works. The device continued rising until it reached the ceiling, then moved horizontally as William controlled it with a small remote. Tears welled in his eyes as decades of doubt and regret gave way to vindication. Without stopping to think about consequences, William slipped the device into his pocket and headed to Westmont Technologies. Tonight would be different. Tonight, he would show Richard Whitman exactly who William Jenkins really was. The investor demonstration was in full swing when William arrived at Westmont, earlier than his usual shift. From the shadows of the service corridor, he watched as Richard presented the company's latest innovations to a group of well-dressed potential investors. Among them was Jerome Powell, a notorious tech venture capitalist known for his ruthless approach to business. And now, the culmination of our research, Richard announced, unveiling a sleek prototype. The world's first commercially viable magnetic propulsion system, with applications ranging from clean energy to advanced transportation. The investors murmured appreciatively as the device activated, lifting a scale model vehicle several inches off a platform. William recognized his own solutions integrated into the design, fixes he'd provided during his late-night work sessions. Impressive, Whitman, Powell commented, stroking his silver beard. But Nexus Tech unveiled something similar last quarter. What makes yours different? Richard smiled confidently. Stability and efficiency. Our system uses 40% less energy while maintaining perfect balance, a breakthrough that eluded our competitors. And your team achieved this how? Powell pressed, eyes narrowing. Richard hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Through innovative approaches to field containment. William felt a surge of indignation. His innovative approaches, his solutions. Yet here was Richard taking full credit while William remained hidden in the shadows, exactly where the world had always told him he belonged. Before he could reconsider, William stepped forward into the conference room. The conversation halted as all eyes turned to the uniformed janitor who had interrupted their private meeting. Mr. Jenkins, Richard said, clearly startled. We're in the middle of something here. I can see that, William replied calmly, approaching the group. You're showing them my work. A tense silence fell over the room. The investors exchanged confused glances. Is this some kind of joke? Powell asked, looking between Richard and William. Richard's face flushed. William, this isn't the time or place. When is the time, Mr. Whitman? William interrupted. After another 30 years of watching other people take credit for what I can do. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his device. You want innovation? I'll show you innovation. William placed his creation on the conference table and activated it. The small metallic box hummed to life, rising smoothly into the air. Unlike the company's prototype, which required a platform of equipment to function, William's device operated independently, hovering with perfect stability. My God, whispered one of the investors, staring at the floating device. What is that? True anti-gravity, William answered. No external power source, no platform, no constraints, just pure magnetic field manipulation. Powell leaned forward, his expression shifting from skepticism to intense interest. That's impossible. Apparently not, Richard said quietly, watching the device with amazement. William guided his invention around the room using the small remote control, demonstrating its precision and stability. I've spent my life being told what I couldn't do, what wasn't possible for someone like me. His voice remained steady, decades of suppressed ambition finding release at last. This is what was possible all along. After the demonstration, the investors bombarded William with questions, technical specifications, potential applications, development timeline. William answered with the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime learning and creating in isolation, his mind unbound by conventional limitations. Richard stood to the side, watching this transformation with a complex mixture of emotions playing across his face. When the investors finally departed, buzzing with excitement about what they'd witnessed, only Richard and William remained in the conference room. "Why didn't you tell me?" Richard asked, breaking the silence. "All these months you were developing this on your own." William carefully retrieved his device from where it hovered above the table. "Would you have believed me if I had? After seeing what you could do with our prototypes?" "Yes, I would have." Richard shook his head. "You could have come to me. We could have developed this together, properly funded with a full team." "That's not how I work," William replied. "Never had a team, never had funding, just me, my hands, and whatever I could salvage." Richard studied him for a long moment. "So what happens now?" It was the question William hadn't allowed himself to consider. What did happen now? His secret was out. His creation, his life's work had been revealed. There was no going back to.